December 1944. The Ardennes forest groaned under the weight of snow and silence. Every branch bowed with ice. Every sound carried for miles. When it came, the sound was wrong. Not the familiar boom of rifles or the rhythmic crack of machine gun fire. It was a hiss, low, metallic, relentless. High in the trees, German snipers froze behind their scopes. For years, the night had belonged to them, the patient hunters, ghosts in white camouflage. They had killed by the breath of frost, vanishing before the enemy even understood what had happened. But now, from the shattered hamlets below, came that sinister hissing again. Ch-ch-ch, thunk, thunk, thunk. And with it, the dreadful knowledge that darkness no longer belonged to them. Across the snowfields, American infantry were moving. They carried a weapon that looked like it had been built from factory scraps, pressed steel, rough welds, a wire stock that rattled when it moved. It had no polish, no elegance, no pride. And yet, it was rewriting the rules of close-quarters warfare. The soldiers called it the M3 grease gun. The Germans, after that winter, would remember it by another name, the whisper of death in the dark. 2 years before the Ardennes froze beneath the snows of war, another kind of battle was raging, not in the forests of Europe, but on the factory floors of Detroit. By 1942, the US Army had a problem. Its frontline submachine gun, the Thompson, was powerful and iconic, the Chicago typewriter that had roared through Prohibition and into early war films. But it was also expensive, heavy, and slow to build. Each one consumed skilled labor hours, precision machining, and money that a nation fighting on 2 oceans could no longer afford. The War Department sent out a demand. Give us something cheaper, faster, simpler, but keep the killing power. And in response, the Inland Division of General Motors, more accustomed to building car parts than battle weapons, was handed the challenge. What emerged from their stamping presses was nothing like the polished weapons of Europe. The M3 was born not from craftsmanship, but from industrial defiance. It was pressed, bent, and welded from sheet metal, its parts crudely fitted together like sections of a mechanic's toolkit. The design looked more like a garage experiment than a soldier's firearm. When the first prototypes arrived at testing grounds, officers laughed. "It looks like a grease gun," one sergeant muttered, referring to the tools used to pump lubricant into engines. The name stuck. But when the trigger was pulled, the laughter stopped. The M3 spat heavy .45 caliber rounds with a subdued mechanical snarl. Not the thunderclap of the Thompson, but a soft, controlled rhythm that stayed steady even under pressure. In the mud, in the cold, in the hands of ordinary soldiers, the gun did not jam. It did not fail. It fired again and again through dirt, ice, and exhaustion. It wasn't beautiful. It was American. A weapon forged not for parade grounds or propaganda films, but for one purpose only: to be built fast, shipped faster, and fired without mercy. By the time the first crates left the docks of New York for the battlefields of Europe, the grease gun had become the physical embodiment of America's wartime philosophy: function over form, volume over vanity. The genius of the M3 lay not in innovation, but in restraint. Every curve, every joint, every missing polish mark told the same story: build more, build faster. While the Thompson submachine gun took 150 man-hours and required the touch of a trained machinist, the M3 could be pressed, welded, and assembled in less than 10. Its cost? Barely a fifth of the Thompson's. A single factory line could churn out thousands each month, flooding the front lines with weapons that didn't need to be beautiful, only reliable. The M3's mechanical heart was deceptively primitive. A simple blowback system, a fixed firing pin, and a slow cyclic rate of about 450 rounds per minute. But that slow rhythm became its hidden advantage. Where the Thompson bucked violently, wasting ammunition in wild bursts, the M3's steady pulse allowed soldiers to aim. 3-shot volleys, controlled, precise, perfect for alleyways, ruins, and snow-choked forests where the distance between life and death was measured in meters. American GIs quickly discovered its temperament. It didn't overheat. It didn't climb out of control. It could be handled with thick gloves and frozen hands. Its narrow frame allowed it to slip through the hatches of tanks, the tight corridors of bombed-out buildings, and the cramped foxholes of the European front. Tank crews loved it. It could be stowed under a seat and drawn in seconds. Infantrymen trusted it. It kept firing when rifles froze and bolts jammed. To German eyes, it was an insult to engineering, a crude, welded tube masquerading as a gun. But that was its genius. It turned mass production into a weapon. For the Wehrmacht, each rifle or MP40 was the result of precision tooling and limited resources. For the Americans, the M3 was an extension of the factory itself, stamped, shipped, and ready to kill by the thousands. It was not a soldier's weapon. It was an industrial statement. In the total war of the 20th century, artistry meant nothing. Quantity was power. And every grease gun sent across the Atlantic was another whisper in the storm that would eventually drown the Reich. Winter, 1944, the Ardennes. The snow turned blood black beneath the trees. German sharpshooters, masters of patience and silence, waited for silhouettes to move against the pale horizon. They had done this for years. One shot, one kill, and then the slow fade into the fog. But that winter, something new hunted them. From the shattered villages of Belgium to the frozen hedgerows of Normandy, American infantry advanced with an unfamiliar weapon in hand. It did not shout. It whispered, a mechanical rasp that slid through the forest like the grinding of gears. And with that whisper came a flood of .45 caliber rounds that punched through wood, plaster, and the thin defences of a sniper's nest. One Wehrmacht prisoner would later describe it as a hacking phantom in the void. The sound of death moving closer, impossible to locate until it was too late. In the ruined towns of Metz and Bastogne, the M3 proved its worth. During night patrols, its subdued tone kept muzzle flashes low, masking the shooter's position. In tight stairwells and cellars, its short barrel and measured rate made it deadly at arm's length. German marksmen, used to dictating the rhythm of a fight, found themselves reacting, or dying, before they could reload. American paratroopers learned to sweep entire basements with short, surgical bursts, conserving ammunition yet overwhelming resistance. Where the MP40 chattered wildly and jammed in the cold, the grease gun answered with calm precision. It was in Bastogne, the encircled heart of the Battle of the Bulge, that its legend hardened into truth. The 101st Airborne held the town like a clenched fist, while German artillery pounded from all sides. Food froze. Ammunition dwindled. But the M3 kept working. Its slow, deliberate rhythm allowed defenders to ration bullets without surrendering firepower. When German patrols tried to creep through the ruins at night, they were met not by shouts or flares, but by the soft pulse of the grease gun, bursts that echoed through the snow and left silence behind. For the first time, the hunters of the Wehrmacht found themselves hunted. Reports began to circulate among German units. American submachine guns were too quiet, too quick, and everywhere at once. Snipers, who had once ruled the night, now feared it. Each time they pulled the trigger, the response came. Heavy, invisible, and final. By dawn, the snow around Bastogne was no longer white. In the dying winter of the Third Reich, the German armories still produced masterpieces. Their MP40s were elegant, their Mausers precise. their optics works of art, crafted by men who believed perfection could win wars. But in 1944, perfection was dying faster than it could be built. Every German weapon required time the Reich no longer possessed. Each factory was scarred by Allied bombing, every supply line strangled by fuel shortages and shattered rails. What emerged from those workshops was exquisite, but rare. A single MP40 could take days to complete. A grease gun could be stamped out in hours. And that was the difference. The M3 was not a gunsmith's pride. It was an assembly line's raw, made tangible. The Americans had realized something profound, that war in the industrial age was not won by craftsmanship, but by continuity, by a machine that could build 1,000 more machines before the enemy finished one. In Detroit, Chicago, and Buffalo, night shifts turned steel sheets into weapons. Every worker, every rivet, every spark contributed to an invisible army of firepower that crossed the Atlantic by the tens of thousands. Each M3 that reached the front was a message. We can replace what you destroy faster than you can destroy it. For the Germans, the comparison was existential. Their finest engineers designed weapons like the Sturmgewehr 44 and the MG 42, technological marvels that could change battles but not wars. They needed perfection to function. The M3 needed only a trigger and a man to pull it. When Allied intelligence interrogated captured German officers, the response was often the same. You Americans don't understand weapons. But by 1945, it was clear. The Americans understood war. They understood that in a world consumed by steel and smoke, simplicity was not ignorance. It was evolution. The grease gun had become the face of that philosophy, a symbol that the age of the craftsman had given way to the age of the factory. And in that transformation, the balance of power shifted forever. In late December 1944, Bastogne was a frozen island in a sea of enemy steel. The 101st Airborne, surrounded and outnumbered, fought with frostbitten fingers and dwindling supplies. Snow muffled everything. Orders, footsteps, even the dying. Only one sound remained distinct in that suffocating silence, the low metallic hiss of the M3 grease gun. The town was a labyrinth of ruins, every street a trap, every shadow a sniper's nest. German soldiers crept through the wreckage, certain that the night was theirs, but they had misjudged the weapon that awaited them. From the basements and shattered doorways, the M3 whispered its reply, steady, precise, merciless. The paratroopers of the 101st fought like ghosts in the snow. They fired in bursts, never wasting rounds, never revealing their positions for more than a heartbeat. The grease gun's slow rate of fire kept their ammunition alive when every bullet mattered. Its compact frame slipped through narrow alleys and tank hatches, its wire stock unfolding in a blink when the next fight found them. Even the weapon's awkward shape, once mocked by its users, now seemed perfect, like a tool designed by the war itself. German sharpshooters soon learned the futility of their craft. They would fire once, maybe twice, before the counterfire arrived. A single hiss, then silence. When daylight came, their perches in the church spires and attics were empty. Their owners scattered among the ruins below. Inside the town, soldiers began to treat the M3 as something more than a gun. It became a companion, the one thing that never failed, never froze, never jammed, even when fingers turned blue and the world seemed to vanish into ice. It was ugly, yes, but it lived. And in Bastogne, survival was beauty enough. When reinforcements finally broke through the German lines, they found the paratroopers half-starved, eyes hollow, uniforms stiff with frost. But the M3s still hung from their shoulders, clean, oiled and ready. Proof that in the darkest winter of the European war, America's simplest weapon had stood the cold and spoken louder than fear. By the spring of 1945, the snows had melted from the Ardennes, revealing the bones of a continent exhausted by fire. American columns rolled eastward into Germany's heart, their tanks crossing the Rhine with the same unhurried confidence as the weapons slung across the soldiers' chests. Among them, the M3 grease gun had ceased to be a novelty. It was now a trusted instrument, the quiet partner of victory. It had proven something that no grand theory of war could, that a tool built without pride could still inspire it. That the measure of a weapon lay not in its craftsmanship, but in its endurance, in how it performed when the mud froze, the light failed, and the enemy was 10 feet away. After the war, the M3 would travel again, to Korea, to Vietnam, to countless conflicts where American soldiers fought in the shadows of jungles and streets. It would remain in service for decades, long after sleeker, faster guns replaced it, because it had earned the one reputation that mattered most. It worked. In museums today, it sits beside the grand weapons of the age, the Thompson, the MP40, the Sten. It lacks their elegance, their fame, their cinematic glory. But for those who survived the frozen nights of Bastogne, the grease gun was not a relic. It was a reminder that in war, survival itself can be a kind of art. The M3 was never beautiful, but beauty does not win battles. Simplicity does. And the grease gun, born from Detroit's forges and baptized in the snows of Ardennes, proved that truth with every whisper of its steel heart. History remembers the great weapons of war by their noise, the roar of engines, the thunder of artillery, the scream of aircraft diving through cloud. But sometimes, the weapons that change everything speak in whispers. The M3 grease gun was one of those whispers. It did not promise glory. It did not demand admiration. It asked only to function, and in doing so, it became immortal. In the frozen dark of Ardennes, it spoke for every soldier who fought not for medals or victory parades, but for the next dawn. It was the voice of pragmatism, the hum of machinery turned into survival. Each stamped plate, each welded seam, carried the rhythm of a civilization that understood the new truth of war, that the future would belong to those who could build faster than death could destroy. The German snipers feared it because it stole their night. History honors it because it spoke the language of the modern age. Efficient, unromantic, unstoppable. A weapon that reminded mankind that simplicity, when refined by necessity, can become a form of genius.